The third and final section that you're going to be working on this week is a discussion. By far and away, the discussion is going to be much more difficult than these relatively short, probably no longer than a page, method and results section. Discussion takes a while to do. You actually have to learn a lot about the writing style, but also be able to read the literature and figure things out. On page 517 of your book, it starts going over what you need to do in a results section. In a discussion section. And I want to reiterate this for you. It doesn't actually give that much for you. But let me tell you what the four things are. The first thing that you always do at the start of a discussion is you summarize your main findings from your study. Did you get evidence to support your hypothesis or not? So paragraph 1 is always a summary of what you were able to find or not find. Paragraph 2, 3, and 4 usually vary a bit. But generally speaking, in paragraph 2, we usually get into the strengths and weaknesses of your study. What was good? What was bad? What was strong? What was weak about the study? And so there you go into some of the details about strengths and weaknesses of your study. The third section is usually a literature tie-in, is what I call it. And in this section, you talk about your results and you relate how your results match up or don't match up with the literature. Now, sections 2 and 3, strengths and weaknesses, as well as literature tie-in, can actually be reversed sometimes. For example, if you get really terrible results, then you start going into especially weaknesses and what was wrong with everything that you did. If you get everything you predicted you should have gotten, then many times you can say, well, this matches up with what Jones and Jones found, and you relate it to the literature. The final section of a discussion is often future studies, where you talk about not just fixing it, well, we should have had more people in the study, but you say what else could be done, how it could be mapped and related, and so forth. So the discussion section usually is a couple pages long because you go on for a while about these things. The book kind of has the specifics. You have these 4 areas. Let's take a look at this paper. This paper is good because it goes into a whole lot of stuff about it. If you look on page 8, page 8 does a nice job of things. The present study was designed to investigate the reaction to things. Do they actually summarize what they found? Yeah, in the last sentence here it looks like. The present findings suggest that some aspects of attachment style may play a significant role in moderating participants' reactions to group. So it's a general summary. They have a lot of data here, so they can't make too many. But the basic idea here and what you should be doing in your first paragraph is summarizing what happened in our study. In terms of, you don't give all the results section over again, but you might want to make a statement. We found that our group was not lonely, either socially and emotionally, and that there was a significant relationship between social and emotional loneliness. So you give some sort of summary about what happened. And actually, if you're a really good reader of articles, if you look at some of the other articles that we've looked at, the first paragraph of the discussion usually should give kind of key findings here. I'm even looking back at the article that we looked at as far as driving and accidents, the full text article. Let's see. Yes, if you actually look at the article on driving, the observed effects of teenage passengers on risky driving behaviors, if you look, if you look at the discussion, it actually, in the first paragraph, the effects of teenage passengers on teen driving is well established. In the study, we investigated this, so they say what the hypothesis was. And then on page, it looks like 8, the findings indicate that teenage drivers engage in greater risky behavior. The findings show that teenage drivers do this and that. This is exactly what a good discussion should start off with. And in fact, in some ways, it's better to read than the abstract because you can really see what they found in the study. So your job is to do that. Summarize in a really concise, direct paragraph whether or not our group was socially, emotionally lonely, and whether or not there was a relationship between these two. Paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 are really up to you. Probably paragraph 2, if the results actually really agree with the literature and you want to talk about that, you could go into relating this to the literature. Is it generally found that college students don't have too much loneliness? Because our sample certainly suggested that. You could talk about strengths and weaknesses if you want. In our study, with all those 1s and 1.4s, it's generally been found that our group didn't have much in the way of social and emotional loneliness. So you could say in the present study we found this, but in other research, which you could cite the way they cite in this article, you could say the work of Jones and Jones found that college students do have a great deal of social and emotional loneliness. And then the idea is to go into why we got our results and why they got theirs. Maybe you go into a lack of sample size. Maybe you go into the fact that we're dealing with non-traditional students as opposed to traditional age college students. So you talk about the strengths and weaknesses of our study and what you basically found. And I'm going to open this up more next week when we meet. So you go into strengths and weaknesses of the study. You once again look at these other articles that I had you post and you see if you can find some relationship. In this article they talk about if people have good social attachment, they won't be lonely. Maybe the fact is that a lot of you have a lot of attachments in your life and you do have a lot of people around you and you're very socially connected, and that's why you have very low scores for loneliness. Then the final section is to really go into this idea of future studies. Not just, well, I'd have more people in a future study, but new and novel ideas that you could have to really develop this more fully. Maybe there's a study you could look at with measuring something like depression, or maybe you could look at attachment style like this article did, or use this to develop a peer teen counseling program. So the idea is in your discussion, you're really supposed to show your mettle with this idea of relating your results to things that could really represent why these results occurred. So I've been babbling on here for 7 minutes. The idea is for each one of these sections, next week you'll get a very modest amount of points. It might be 10 or 15 points for each one of these sections just to have done it. But the more you can do on this, the better, because once we meet face-to-face week 4, what I will be doing is I'll probably give you, since I'm going to be off to Hawaii after that, 2 or 3 weeks to actually work on hopefully doing multiple drafts of this paper in the various sections so that you can turn this into a really good product. As I look at the abstract and results from this week in terms of the driving study, it just seems that you guys didn't have enough time to actually send me a couple of drafts here, and so it's still not quite up to par in terms of getting you to write at the level that you need to. So hopefully this makes sense. With these acoustic tapes, these are just here for you to listen to help you write. I will post these acoustics out there, but your assignment is basically to have a good draft of a method, result, and a discussion if you possibly can. Send me drafts if it's over the weekend, or if you just want to do one and post it, you can. And then when we come into class next week, I'll hopefully bring in a few good examples from what you guys have that really illustrates this. I'm hoping you can really take a step up. You'll need to put a fair amount of work, not just this week onto this task, but in the future weeks as well. So thank you very much. Bye now.